for Monday, April 23rd, 2018. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public and the press on January 5th, 2018, and was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7.
Roll call.
Councilmember Ooms.
Here.
Councilmember Kadish.
Here.
Councilmember Van Tassel.
Here.
Councilmember Allberger.
Here.
Council President Murphy.
Here. Please rise to salute the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening we have a few proclamations. Would Chief Mills and Captain Young please come forward? And will Mr. Shortway please read it?
This is a proclamation for Police Week 2018. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States designated the week of Sunday, May 13th, 2018 through Saturday, May 19th, 2018 as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the Township of Vernon Police Department played an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the Township of Vernon. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency. And that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Vernon Township Police Department unceasingly provide a vital service. Now, therefore, I, Council President Gene Murphy, and the Vernon Township Council do hereby proclaim that the week of May 13, 2018 through May 19, 2018 is designated as Police Week in the Township of Vernon, and call upon all citizens and patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe this week with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our community may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to the responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in so doing have established for themselves an inviolable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Given under my hand in these free United States in the Township of Vernon, State of New Jersey, on the 23rd day of April 2018, to which I have caused the seal of the Township of Vernon to be affixed and have made this proclamation public. Gentlemen, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all your men and women under your command.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the mayor, the business administrator, the council president, and the council for, I've been an officer here for 28 years now, and the support has always been there. We've always been able to get what we needed to do, what we do for the citizens of this town, and for that we thank you. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next proclamation we have is Older Americans Month. Councilmember Kadish, please read that.
Older Americans Month, May 2018. Whereas Vernon Township is committed to valuing all individuals and recognizing their ongoing life achievements, and whereas older adults in Vernon Township play an important role by continuing to contribute experience, knowledge, wisdom, and accomplishments, and whereas older adults are active community members involved in volunteering, mentorship, arts and culture, and civic engagement, and whereas our community can provide opportunities to allow older citizens to continue to flourish by emphasizing the importance of elders and their leadership, by presenting opportunities for older Americans to share their wisdom, experience, and skills, and recognizing older Americans as a valuable asset in strengthening American communities. Now, therefore, President Gene Murphy and Mayor Shortway and the Vernon Township Council do hereby proclaim May 2018 to be Older Americans Month in Vernon Township. We urge every citizen to take the time this month to recognize older adults and people who serve and support them as powerful and vital citizens who greatly contribute to the community. Given under his hand in these free United States and Township of Vernon on this 23rd day of April 2018, and to which he has caused the seal of Township of Vernon to be affixed and made this proclamation public, Harry J. Shortway, Mayor, and Gene Murphy, Council President.
Thank you. The next proclamation is for the Appalachian Trail. Whereas Appalachian Trail founder Benton McKay's vision of the Appalachian Trail included opportunities for recreation, recuperation, and employment through a series of recreational communities throughout the Appalachian chain to be connected by a walking trail, and whereas communities along the Appalachian Trail are important partners for the sustainability of the trail and its greenway for an estimated 4 million visitors to the trail every year. And whereas Appalachian National Scenic Trail walking adventures, overlooks, and primitive areas present opportunities to attract visitors to Appalachian Trail communities from around the world, and whereas this designation will act as a catalyst for enhancing sustainable economic development and engaging Vernon citizens as Appalachian Trail stewards, and whereas Vernon is recognized as taking steps to ensure the ongoing protection of its natural and recreational resources while investing in its future as a memorable destination along the Appalachian Trail, and whereas Vernon, New Jersey is now recognized and designated as an Appalachian Trail community, an official designation conferred by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, and desires to continue its efforts to support the Appalachian Trail and its community effort for at least 5 years. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Shortway of the Township Council, do hereby proclaim that Vernon accepts the designation as an Appalachian Trail community and urges its citizens to support the Appalachian Trail through appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 23rd day of April 2018, Harry J. Shortway, Mayor, Gene Murphy, Council President, Karen Lutz, Regional Director, Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Next, may I have a motion to open to public comments?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Please note, public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person for current agenda items only. Is there anyone from the public that would like to step up and make a comment? Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have our minutes. May I have a motion to adopt the following minutes? Regular meeting minutes, March 26, 2018, and the executive session minutes of March 26 of 2018.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Cady?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Olberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have items for discussion. Would Mayor Shortway please begin the discussion on the Municipal Services Act?
Back in November of 2010, I was a member of the council at that time. We started looking into the act because it is our responsibility as council people and my administration to use our due diligence to look at all the costs of the town. But back then, we commissioned an engineering firm to do the study based on the Stonehill decision on the difficulty factor involving snow plowing. Stonehill was awarded by a judge because, let's see what he said here, difficulty factor was not an exact scientific figure, but was arrived at because the pattern of clearing the village's roads, talking about Stonehill, was substantially more difficult than the average throughout the municipality. To be sure, Judge Stanton had the feel of the case, and his estimate of the difficulty factor at 50% was not at all wide of the mark. But nothing was based on science. So we started looking at that. They did an engineering report. Not everybody was at 1.5. They were absolutely substantially less. So I think it's our due diligence to start looking at this again. It may turn out that way, but at least we need to have the discussion. You know, first, when we have the plowing out there, we have the snowstorms, we receive, and 90%, 95% are unjustified, all the complaints. Our DPW does a great job plowing these roads. They are difficult. Breakneck Road is difficult. Coming in the snow. I would not want their job going hour upon hour of driving in these snowstorms. They do a great job. It is a difficult job. But we need to look at costs. Many people during these complaints do not realize their private qualified communities receive reimbursement until I speak with them. They're like, what do you mean we get reimbursed? Well, you do get reimbursed. Ask the leaders of your lake communities. They will tell you. So at the very least, I believe the council should, again, visit this, discuss this, no matter how painful it is. It's not going to be welcomed, but we owe it to the taxpayers in this town, again, to have a discussion. And that's all I'm asking.
The council's been provided a copy of the report. We've been provided with the cost for the past several years. And actually, because we're working on we just paid 2016, correct? So also, our CFO just handed us a sheet that shows what the 2014, 15, and 16 was paid out, and also what it would have been had we followed the recommendations of the engineer's report from 2011. I think one of the things that this does not include in what we do pay out is that the town pays for the salt. So I'm just wondering, is the salt even included in any of the calculations anywhere as a material cost? I guess maybe we've asked Ed Babcock to be here today. So if you could just come up.
Since I took office, it's been this way since 2011, 2010. Sorry, we supply them with grits and salt. Now, the only thing that we do is we get it at our cost, which is substantial compared to what they were getting it at. That's one reason that we're doing this. Now, when they call us up after a snowstorm, we want 15 loads, we want 20 loads, we want 4 loads. We have to, the next day, we have to try to do our best to get them their loads because if we have another storm coming in. It's one of these things where I see they have to do it, and the costs, I'm not exactly sure where that's in. Elko would know better than that as far as that goes. What I do is when they submit their bills for, like, say, 2016, I break out our sheets and compare apples to apples. If they were out the same time we were, to make sure that they all line up. And 99% of the time, they're out when we're out. So they're legit. There are a couple of times when they've been out for ice spots that we don't have to go out for. So it's kind of a wash on that. But as far as the cost of the salt sand, Elko would have a better idea as that goes because we don't charge them at the DPW. Mm-hmm. That comes through her office. So it's a necessary evil. And there's definitely an issue that everybody basically knows about. We need to rethink this, like the mayor said. We need to do something about this as far as supplying it to them, and maybe we can work something out to where they can possibly piggyback off our setup. I don't know. That's something we need to look into. That's for sure.
Yeah. At the last meeting, a comment came up that the communities, I guess some of the communities pick up their own salt or grit. Are we pretty much delivering them to all of the communities?
We deliver to, I would say, probably 99% of them. There are one or two that come get it as they need it. We have 3 really big ones. We have Highland Lakes, we have Berry Lakes, we have Kosh's guys. That's W Lake Panorama and so forth. We have Scenic Lakes. Depending on what the storm is, if we have a storm and then we get another one coming 2 nights later, they'll call up, okay, can you make a delivery? That doesn't give us time to go through our equipment to get it ready for the storm, and that's the issue. That's a real issue for us. As far as the trucks go, it's just beating them up. We can't set them down to do services that we need to do. Obviously, even with washing trucks, so you can see what's wrong with them. It's something that, say, like Highland Lakes, they want 20 loads. That means I have 2 or 3 trucks running all day, and a guy in a loader. That takes away from other issues that we have. So there are ones that come down after their own, but It's not enough. All should be coming after it. They should all be coming down to us. Absolutely.
Councilmember Wahlberger, you have any comments or?
One of the things that we have to think about too is come spring, we haul from Highland Lakes and Berry Lakes both, we haul back that grit. So it's costing us again. We don't need to have it hauled out of there. They need it because they need the space for their street sweeping. So, that's another cost on to us that should be put back on them because we'd be happy to leave it up there. It would save us again in the fall, bringing it all back up again.
Exactly.
And like you say, if you can't keep up with, you have, 4 Sterlings? You can't even get parts for them anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just wear and tear on trucks that we really can't afford. So I was saying we have to look at the cost of reimbursing them totally because we just can't afford it with it. I mean, you're talking fuel to go get it from, whether it's 284 is most of the time we're going to anymore.
284, Stavola, Hamburg, whoever's got the bids.
Yeah, so your man and material, your road crew is down again. You just had some more guys get hurt. Thank God it's not winter time.
Yeah.
Our manpower is not where it needs to be doing the maintenance that we do in the winter time because we're hauling material around.
It's a real issue to where I've done some juggling to make sure we have stuff for our roads. I've gone through and I've talked to Elk. I said, Elk, we need a little more salt or sand. I don't like to get anywhere below half a salt shed, but there's been times when there's not much we can do because, like I said, my concentration is on our roads. We've never been out of salt or grits. We have never been. There was a rumor that we were out, and that's false. We've always had sand, grits, salt, but I like to try to keep at least a half a salt shed. That's what they recommend. That way, if you have a real big storm, you have something to fall back on. As far as our grits go, just like Mr. Allberger said, we're hauling from whoever has the state contracts at the time. You're hauling in anywhere from 7 to 10 ton at a shot. We can't have every truck hauling in from hauling the grits in. We're going to have stuff hauling out. So by the time we have 2, 3, 4 trucks going out, you have to have at least 2 or 3 trucks if you can hauling stuff in just to keep up with the stuff going out. So there's definitely a real issue. That's the ways about it. So.
Councilmember Van Tassel, do you have any?
No.
Councilmember Kadish?
In the 90s, when I was the road commissioner, we always negotiated individually with each private community. I don't see why we need to reimburse their costs because we're not responsible for their management. They also may pay for materials that we don't have to pay taxes for instance, gasoline, the salt itself. And I really think that for that reason, we should not be fully reimbursing them. Our effort is so that we don't double tax them so that they're paying twice for the same service. And essentially, I think that this report that we have is so specific and so exacting in terms of each road that has mileage, and it's a fairly good, as far as I'm concerned, formulation. I've always been against the 1.5 being applied for everyone. I don't think it was fair. I'm not even sure that Judge Stanton used any scientific reasoning for making Stone Hill 1.5. I never understood why we're being penalized for the fact that the private communities did not bring their roads up necessarily to township standards. To me, their formulation should be 0.75. We're not doing that. And it just seems to me very strange that over the years this formulation was applied across the board of 1.5. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Councilmember Holmes?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
So I just wanted to make a comment on something that Councilmember Kadish mentioned, because what happens here is that you have all of the costs that are incurred for the township roads. So in 2016, it was $252,000 and change. then it's divided among the 103 miles of road, comes to a little over $2,400 per mile. But within that amount, you're saying 20% of that is overhead? Is that what you're talking about? You mentioned that you didn't see why we should be reimbursing for overhead.
Well, I haven't looked at these particular figures, but we're not responsible for their management if their costs are higher than what ours are.
Well, these are our costs. That's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
these are our costs that include the overhead.
And I'm not sure that I think, as John has mentioned, that when we go and send our trucks off to pick up salt, I'm not sure that cost is factored in, is it?
I don't know. That's something that Elka would. When I give her the figures that they send me, we send them over to Elka for that. Like I said, I keep track of what we buy, absolutely, as far as the salt and the grits. But I've never actually figured that into the cost as far as the figures.
It's the same thing when we charge for police officers. We've never charged for the gasoline that the cars are burning when they're off duty at Mountain Creek or wherever they're performing the service. And I think that these costs should be factored in. I don't want all the rest of the taxpayers paying more for this formulation than they should be.
Just as a good point, when we were hauling grits back from Highland Lakes, their sweepings, it took us almost 2 weeks. And I went through every sheet of ours, worksheet, who did what, how many hours, how many trucks. I did the truck hours, I did the man hours. It wound up being like $17,000 for like 2 weeks of work. And Mr. McLaughlin and I were talking about this, and he was asking how come it was so much higher. I said, well, you had to figure in everything. I mean, you're talking labor, you're talking trucks, all that stuff. The only thing I didn't figure into that was the fuel. But I didn't have those figures at the time. So at least the truck rates and the man rates, and plus the tipping fees. So there's a big difference when, I don't know what was in years past. I have no idea as far as what, if there was any kind of written agreement to what they were charging, as far as if it was just labor or if it was just trucking fees, I'm not sure. And I know Mr. Olberg and we talked about this years ago. It's just, it is an issue to where you just got to make sure everything's there. That's what I've been trying to do since I've been over there, trying to make sure everything's lined up, everything's this, everything's here, and it's starting to work. We're starting to get a little better with things. Absolutely, a little more accountability for some of these people. And one of the issues is that, especially wintertime, the private communities will be out more, putting down more material than us, and that's an issue to where they're using so much more than years past. So we really do need to look into some things for sure.
As I say, I don't see how we're responsible for their management.
Exactly.
How is lighting figured? We have lighting from, 3 different suppliers? And how is that averaged in?
Lighting is a separate fee that they get reimbursed for. I believe it's 13% of the lighting costs. Or Stonehill had a different formula as part of their, because they have a lot of additional lighting. It's supposed to be based on the same lighting that the township has. So if the township only has lights on the street corners, like at intersections, then that's all we should be reimbursing at the communities.
But, for instance, the playground lighting doesn't factor into this, I take it.
No, it shouldn't.
Any other council members have any questions? Thank you.
So I'm hoping that we can apply these, I think, well-founded formulations to the specific communities in the future.
Well, I would actually think that maybe, and I'll ask the council, would ask if we could get a cost maybe to update this. I mean, I'm sure, like, the roads haven't changed, other than maybe adding on, I think it was Baker Road or whatever, but...
Yeah, then we, Whispering Woods, which is Upper Plateau, we took that over, so that's no longer.
So I'm just wondering, do you think it's worthwhile having this updated? If the same, from 2011, because this was done in 2011. Do you see any reason to have it updated?
It cost $12,000 to do the study, if I remember, but it was like
That's
8
what it
years
was.
ago. I don't know what the update would be, and I didn't budget to do the study, an
Well,
update.
that's what I'm saying, is the study's pretty much been done, if this same firm is still operating.
That wouldn't
But,
be the only thing that we'd have to update. The roads haven't changed. It would just be the salaries and the cost of fuel, basically, isn't it?
You could probably do that in-house.
Well, that's not going to change the roads, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm just saying, the amount of roads is not changing, other than the roads that we added. So the fuel is the fuel, and that changes every year within everybody's costs. But I'm just saying, because the only roads that are changed are, like you said, Whispering Woods may be added on if they dedicate that, and
We'll examine
Baker.
it, analyze it, and we'll put forth an idea to the council where they want to proceed.
Mhm.
We'll make suggestions, and then the council will look for direction, what you want us to do.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Resolution 18-129, recognizing Municipal Clerks Week from May 6th to May 10th. Resolution 18-130, total disabled veteran Govier. This resolution, 18-131, refund taxes for totally disabled veteran. Resolution 18-131 is also, why are there two?
One is canceling the taxes.
Okay.
And one's the refund.
Okay. And one is, the 131 is the refund for the disabled veteran Govier. Resolution 18-132, the township has awarded additional funds for the distracted driving crackdown. This accepts that money. Resolution 18-133, this permits charity clothing bins to be placed at the recycling center. Resolution 18-134, this accepts the bids for the sold lots at the auction. Resolution 18-135, this accepts the Land Use Board redevelopment resolution. Resolution 18-136, this authorizes settlement of a grievance with AFSCME. Resolution 18-137, this awards the contract to Greener by Design. Resolution 18-138, this authorizes repair for the Pochuck Valley fire truck. May I have a motion to adopt resolutions 18-129 through 18-138?
I'd like to separate 135.
Okay, any others? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt resolutions 18-129 through 18-134, 18-136 through 18-138?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Bowman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Alberger?
Yes, I abstain on 138.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt 18-129 through 18-134, 18-136 through 18-138.
Did you have a comment or discussion on 18-135?
I have one criticism, well, two actually, and that is one of the recommendations. She had three comments, and I don't know where it is right now, but the second comment was regarding historic sites.
What page are you on, John?
Well, I think 17. She mentions a map, but there's no map included in this report. She did hand it out at the Land Use Board. But
I think there's a picture with that starred out in the study. I came across, it's here, Dan.
but
Town Center Historic
Okay.
Site. And she's got them in little stars. So they are there, indicating the properties.
with respect to those concerned with historic preservation, the board and its professionals responded that historic preservation concerns were beyond the scope of this designation study. I can't imagine having a redevelopment taking place in a town center in which historic elements are not being considered. To me, I think that in the plan that should follow this, that it should very much become part of the development. and I hope that the council agrees, as well as the professionals involved. The other question I have is that this has to be followed up with a pretty specific plan. Otherwise, the planning will be done in a random manner. So I'm just kind of curious how that's going to be done. I understand that one of the objectives is to provide water and sewer to this area, and that's very important. But I would think that we'd want to know what kind of development we're going to have once we declare this zone as a redevelopment zone. Okay.
I think basically the town center plan is going to dictate the development, but the specifics to the plan, you would need the planner here and ask that specifically. But the town center plan outlines pretty specifically what we're looking at and what is permitted use. If it's not permitted, if it's not listed, it's not allowed.
In other words, planning through zoning.
Yes.
Well, when we did this back in the 90s, not that any of that became to fruition, but there was a lot of planning in terms of style, details, what they wanted the town to look like. It was kind of a copy of Montclair downtown business area, and there were a lot of models that they were trying to emulate at that time, and I don't see that being done here, so I'm just kind of curious how we're going to approach it.
I didn't mean to interrupt. We still have all those plans and all those diagrams and like the illustrations and everything. I've got volumes of it.
But my question is that the concept that we want today?
That Alpine theme.
This is 25 years old.
It would be, like you said, the Alpine, the
Yeah,
CVS.
they updated it, and there is a model they have to follow. You have to have retail on the bottom, apartments on the top, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, right. It's
But as specific what it's going to be, we don't know, I don't think. No.
Well,
They'll develop
I'm
it.
there's
concerned
dozens
about
of different
that.
uses listed.
I mean, throughout history, many towns in New England were centered around a green, and there were specific buildings that were centered on that green, and that was a kind of a specific plan. But do we have a concept of what we want when we get through with this study?
We'd have to go back and look at the plans. That's where I look back as saying what the plans were in the late 90s and the 2003, whenever they presented these town center plans. That's what I go back to look at. That's where I get my vision from, is those that came before my office, the prior council, and the landing board resolutions.
Councilmember Kadish? I
Yes.
believe Chapter 330 of the Township Code illustrates and demonstrates what is the permitted uses and designs. I know it has pictures of storefronts, light fixtures, different awning types that it wants, and it's designated for various different areas. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to a more global concept of how we want the town to function.
That's not in this resolution,
No, I understand that.
but it's not meant to be in this resolution. This is a redevelopment.
Well, I understand that too, but I still think it's an important aspect.
If I may, Councilmember Kadish, this is the next step to be developed is a redevelopment plan for the area designated in need. Certainly, the council will have input as to what that redevelopment plan looks like and what aspects of other plans or other zoning will be a part of it. The council can then determine whether or not the plan is superseding overlay zoning or whether it will act in conjunction with the existing zoning. So this is really just the first step of determining that the property meets the criteria to be declared an area in need of redevelopment.
Well, I think perhaps a discussion should take place, I don't know, work session or whatever. When we look at the zoning that currently exists in the town center, we've really kind of destroyed the residential district. There's hardly anybody who lives within the town center at this point because it was zoned commercial. And we do have a couple of buildings that have apartments above them at this point. I think it's important that we rebuild our residential without upsetting the rateable chase. But if that's what we're going to do, then fine. I just raised it as an issue.
Anyone else?
So what were you saying about the historic designations? I didn't see that paragraph in here.
Yeah, I should have underlined it, but I didn't. But she mentions that a group of advocacy for history, which I thought was a little insulting, that we have a commission who's state mandated. We have a mayor who chose those people to be on that. And they're not really advocates. They're doing a job. They're volunteers. And I just think it was an unfair characterization.
Oh, okay, but they're not changing the historic designations.
As the chairperson of that committee, I feel it's important that we take a look at the inventory that we have and make an analysis as to whether specific buildings have historicity and whether or not they should be preserved. I think we've been sort of dancing around this ever since Wyman's Tavern, and I really think it's an important issue. But it's not a part of this document.
Okay.
May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 18135? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes?
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt Resolution 18135.
Next, we have the public hearing on Ordinance 1816, bond ordinance providing for the improvement of the sanitary sewerage system in and by the Township of Vernon in the County of Sussex, New Jersey, appropriating $140,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $140,000 in bonds or notes of the Township for financing such appropriation. As the title states, this provides bonding for the sewer. May I have a motion to open public hearing for Ordinance 1816?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to address Ordinance 1816? Please step up. Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
A second, please? I'll make the second. All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 1816?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes?
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt Ordinance 1860.
Next, we have Ordinance 1817, bond ordinance appropriating $2,380,870 and authorizing the issuance of 1.453 million bonds or notes of the Township for various improvements or purposes authorized to be undertaken by the Township of Vernon in the County of Sussex. May I have a motion to open up for public hearing for Ordinance 1817?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to address Ordinance 1817? Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 1817?
Motion?
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes?
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Abstain.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt Ordinance 1817.
Next, we move on to public comments. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. May I have a motion to open to the floor for public comment?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to address council, make any comments?
Good evening, Scott Geisels, Barry Lakes. We want to speak a little bit further about the discussions of the Municipal Services Reimbursement Act. A little offended by the us versus them comments coming from the council on this. And further, we talked about this at the last meeting, and for example, Mr. Kadesh had brought up or made some comments of how would the lake communities like to pay for 40% of the salt shed. To that, I remind you always, we're still taxpayers, so we are paying for 40% of the salt shed. My suggestion would be, if we could, in your looking into this issue again, it was revisited, as you know, in 2010, 2011, is if you could engage us lake communities in these discussions. We had also done our own studies that found different results in your engineer report. And it was about to go to litigation at that time before it was finally, the issues were resolved. I think Mayor Murata came in and agreed to the reimbursement at the 1.5% across the board for all the lake communities. Now, I'm not opposed to looking at the difficulty factors, and I understand that some lake communities have a lesser difficulty factor, and maybe they're profiting from the situation at 1.5 now across the board. So I get that. On the other hand, there's other lake communities who feel that they're being underpaid under their current reimbursement. And the Municipal Services Reimbursement Act, as my understanding is we are also taxpayers, so we're supposed to be getting reimbursed for our snow plowing costs. So that's all. If you could please engage us in those conversations before anything finalized on those, appreciate that. Also the salt and grit issues. Under the previous years, prior to 2010 and such, is we had done is purchased our own salt and grit, as Mr. Babcock had pointed out, which we individually would pay a much higher amount for salt and grit thing. But we'd added into the bill for reimbursement to the town. So the understanding was in 2011 is like, look, it's just going to save everybody money if we, as a town, purchase the salt. That way you're not just charging us back at a higher rate. So I realize the delivery costs are involved there, but you also have to consider is the savings of this salt and grit overall to you and us are also coming into play here, as opposed to us buying the salt and grit individually at a much higher rate.
Paying taxes.
And taxes and such like that. So anyway, I think all these issues are something we would gladly sit down and discuss further with you if we can come to some kind of amicable resolution on these. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that has any comments?
Sally Rinker, Vernon.
I want to address the bid that came in for the Faline building. I understand it was $125,000. Is that correct? No one can answer that?
You know it's correct. Continue.
Excuse me?
Continue.
We're taxpayers. We can't know what it's sold
Continue.
for?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I was told it was $125,000. I wasn't in attendance, so I guess I'll have to take the word of a fellow resident. In spite of Councilwoman Murphy repeatedly denigrating the property, a town asset, I understand that it did go for $125,000. Ms. Murphy, a realtor, insisted it could never sell for even $100,000. The bid price plus commission sets the purchase at $137,500, $47,500 more than her insistence of $90,000. And thank goodness the mayor didn't get his way to make it a pocket park, which would have not only cheated the taxpayers of the purchase price of $125,000, but we saved the cost of creating and maintaining a pocket park on that location. Instead, we hopefully have an investor who will be proud to own the property and will do good things with it for the residents and taxpayers of our town. I want to address an item of procedural nature. I've sat here meeting after meeting, quite frankly appalled at the behavior of the chair of these meetings. Councilwoman Murphy, you may disregard my opinion that the conduct of the chairperson has exhibited outrageous behavior, foul attitude, and unfairness to the public and fellow council members. Actually, she cut 3 of you off at the last meeting. But whenever I cross paths with citizens of our town who have seen the videotaping of these meetings, they share the same shock and disappointment. When the chair doesn't let a fellow council person speak about the issues at hand, that is a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. When the chair doesn't let one person speak during the public session for longer than the allotted time, then allows others to speak for far longer, that's a civil rights violation to those who get cut off. Jean, let me remind you when you were speaking from this podium when Mayor Murata was in office. He cut you off, and remember, you marched right down to the ACLU to go complain about him. So what's different now?
Are you done?
I am not done. Is my 3 minutes up? Please stop interrupting me. I'll have to take a little more time.
Just continue.
You've exhibited double standards towards the members of the public, and not only does that violate civil rights and the Open Public Meetings Act, but you look awful doing it too. Moreover, it reflects on our town and gives it a very bad image. Other council members here, you cannot continue to sit there, pardon the expression, like lumps on a log, allowing the chair to continue out of control. You become complicit if you don't stop it. It didn't happen tonight because Ms. Ohms had nothing to say that, disrupted the council, the chairperson. The job is easy. You just read from the specially crafted copy that the clerk prepares for the chair, and it's a very simple document for the chairperson to read and conduct the meetings. Anyone can do it. So please give us some relief in the near future so that we can be proud of our council meetings again. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that have any comments? Please step up. Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close the public?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank the McAfee and Vernon Volunteer Fire Departments for assisting our beautification committee to remove our winter decorations. The auction of township properties that were not needed for public use was a huge success. Max Band auctioned off 94 of the 95 properties, including the Faline building, brought in a total of $459,000 to be realized in the short term, but more importantly, these parcels will go back on the tax rolls. Great appreciation to our CFO, Ms. Yetter, who led the whole process, and her outstanding leadership throughout the process, including the day of the auction. Our zoning, Ms. LaRocca and Mr. Burns, for helping us identify these properties, who, by the way, so did Mr. Wetzel and Mr. Rizzuto when they were on the council. They also took part in this. And our tax assessor for all the help to make this successful for the township. We're receiving positive feedback regarding the USA bus survey. We are now researching parking lots for potential commuters. Earth Fest is next Sunday, April 29th. Taste of Vernon will be held April 30th. The senior luncheon is also next Monday. Details could be seen on the webpage, our township webpage and Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have council comments. Councilmember Ohms?
Yeah, I have a question. So the 459, where is that going to go in the budget? What line?
It goes to miscellaneous revenue not anticipated. It goes to Myrna, which closes out the fund balance.
Okay, miscellaneous, not appropriated. And what'd you say about the fund
And then
balance?
that closes to fund balance at the end of the year.
Goes to
fund
fund
balance.
balance. Okay. Thank you for that question, or answer rather. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kadish?
I'm sure everybody's been invited already, but I want to remind you on Thursday evening at Crystal Springs, we're having an information evening for seniors. We have 41 participants coming to give all sorts of information on what happens when you approach my age. And it's very useful. I hope all the council have been invited. Mayor, have you been invited?
Yes.
Good.
You've been invited?
You didn't get it?
No.
I thought an email went out. Anyway, it'll be downstairs at Crystal Springs. It should be a very informative evening. It's being organized by the American Association of University Women and several other groups. I've been one of the organizers of it. Hope you all come.
No comment.
No comment.
First, I would like to say that the auction was a success, and just to address the Faline building slightly. The ordinance we passed was for $90,000, that it could not be sold for less than. The auctioneer started that bid at $50,000. When you conduct an auction like that, you need to develop interest in it. So what you do is you start the number low and you work the number up. And that's what was trying to be accomplished all this time. This council had been told repeatedly that actually the mayor and I, Gene Murphy, were trying to sell the building for half of what it was worth. As we can see, I think we're just grateful that that eyesore will be taken care of, that we could continue. So when you drive into town, you're not looking at that as a continual reminder of how awful that intersection looks.
Yeah, but we.
Excuse me, it's my comment, Councilmember Ohms.
I ask you a question.
Then you could wait. Please wait. You stop interrupting me. I don't interrupt you.
I apologize.
Okay, so could you just wait till I'm done?
Sorry.
Thank you. And when Mayor Murata was in office, he did not chair meetings. So,
But he cut you off and you
so I'm not actually. And again, so we see the behavior. This is a business meeting, and we are conducting it as a business meeting. We're trying to run the meeting efficiently and have it run smoothly. It's unfortunate that we continually have people that show up and actually add nothing, in my opinion, to the community. So, Councilmember Ohms, did you have a comment?
No, never mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just
Motion
wanted
to adjourn?
Ask you a question and play off of what you were saying.
Motion to
while you were
adjourn?
saying it. So I
May I have a
apologize.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned.
Elka.